Hey, have you heard about Anchor? You probably haven't heard about Anchor yet, so let me tell you about it. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. You probably hear other people talk about how they make podcasts. If they say it's easy, they're crazy. All of their methods are really hard and complicated, but Anchor, super simple. First off, it's free. They have creation tools that let you make the podcast right from your phone. You don't even need a computer. This is 2019. Who uses computers anymore? Anchor distributes your podcast on all the other platforms. No need to go do all that complicated searching and hosting and posting. Hosting and posting. They do it for you. You can also make money from your podcast. Well, that's what I'm doing right now, because you're listening to this ad. They've got everything you need to make a podcast in one spot. No need to search around all over the place. No need to go to 20 different sites. Just one. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Bet you thought I was going to sing right here, didn't you?
Are you looking for the hottest news out of the obstacle racing scene? Want to stay up to date on the freshest info, the latest podiums, and hear interviews with the who's who in OCR? Well, you've come to the wrong place. Well, some of that you'll find here. But we're not the media. This is not ORM, OCM, OCRM, ORCM. This is OCR Talk.
Hey everyone, this is Jason Dupree.
And I'm Anna Landry.
Thank you for tuning in. This is episode 8 of OCR Talk. We are very, very excited about this episode.
It is a very much anticipated episode. I know several people have already been asking me if we've already recorded this episode.
That's nice. I've been eager to record it myself. My favorite podcasts are always the ones that cover races that I went to. So obviously, the race that we went to this weekend is the one that we're going to cover, and that's why it's super exciting.
Yeah, and like right after you go to the event too. It's always really cool to hear about it, like almost immediately after.
Right. So sorry everybody that has been eagerly awaiting. Here we are.
But life.
Yeah, hopefully it'll get out tomorrow, but we'll see. We got a couple of housekeeping tasks to take care of first. We do have a contest that we were doing. Last episode, we announced that the Battle Race gave us a free race code to give away, and we've got a winner for that. We put a post on Facebook, and it said, share this post and get the most likes you can on your post. We messed it up a little bit by sharing the event first, which Facebook's funny in that it doesn't let you track, like when they share it, it just shares the event, not the post that you shared with the event on it.
Yeah, so technical difficulty.
But we did try our best to track down everybody that did share that post, as well as the one that was just an image with the contest information on it. We had several people that shared the post. Thank you guys so much for taking part. We were wishing luck for everybody, and they had some people that had some pretty sweet things to say, some nice things to say about us to try and win this. But it came down to...
Drum roll. Brian Blakely with 100 likes.
100 likes. Nice job, Brian. I noticed on his post he had his wife tagging 100 different people.
Everybody. I'm sure their whole family was tagged. Everybody on Facebook. So good job, Brian, and you're gonna do awesome at Battle OCR, and looking forward to having you there.
Yeah, we're excited to race with you. We'll be contacting you shortly to give you that code so you can get signed up.
And maybe we'll run a lap with you.
Man, this past weekend was pretty cool. I had a race at the 50 Fitness Ranch, which we talked about last episode, but, we released episode the day before the race, so I obviously didn't get to talk about it yet. But just a quick recap, I went into it feeling like I didn't quite eat enough that morning or the day before, but I still felt all right and was running too quick at the beginning. You know how it is, people take off so fast at the beginning of races and you try to keep up with them, and next thing you know, you look down at your watch and it says you're doing a 7-minute mile, and it's like, stop it. Slow down.
Slow down.
But I got to the spear, and his spear throw is a slightly shorter. It's like 2 bales of hay tall instead of 3 or whatever Spartan's is. And my spear was a nice throw, went right over the top. So I ended up having to do some burpees there, which really kind of put the hurt on my lungs. So I slowed down a little bit after that. But I was 5th overall. I mean, there wasn't a ton of people
That's
there.
still
but
not bad. That's still not bad, though.
Those guys were running good. It was a good
Yeah.
race. We had fun.
Well, good. How long was it, like mileage-wise?
It's 5 miles, so it's
5
just
miles?
the normal course that he has. He made a couple of alterations to it. He had one spot in the back that had some extra trails. Instead of just like a mowed trail, it was like through the woods kind of footpath. And there was another spot where you actually went around the lake and then went back through it on the other side and went on from there. So got to get wet a little bit, which was nice.
Yeah, I think I
It was
saw
a good
those
day for
pictures.
it. So yeah, it was a good time. So this past weekend was the Tough Mudder Central Texas, outside of Austin in Smithville, and of course they had their tougher half 5K toughest, which is what we were excited to talk about. And there was at least 4 different live streams that I know about that was happening. That was really cool to see because we're starting to get used to seeing live streams from Tough Mudder and from Spartan, but for people that haven't seen it yet, Toughest out in Europe, they've been doing live streams for the past couple years, if not longer. And while they don't have a Facebook watch page or a Facebook Live page, they have been doing it on different platforms as well as just through a regular, we're live on Facebook kind of thing. So they had a Toughest in Malmo, Sweden. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but they had one. Savage Race had their normal, chasing the leaders down in a gator with their phone.
Yeah, that's what I caught. That was a good race.
Kind of the normal concept from them. I would love to see them step it up a little bit with a little bit more production value. I really appreciate the effort that they put into chasing people with the phone, but it ends up being a bunch of different videos that you have to track down.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course the production quality you can't really expect too much from people's phones, but at the same time, it almost, you just kind of get tired of watching the shaky phone. Yeah, exactly. But it's still exciting. I still watched it.
Oh, for sure. And it is awesome that they're doing it, and they're a smaller race too. So I know, I'm sure it costs tons of money to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, equipment and whatnot.
So maybe they'll get there one day, but until then, I'll keep watching their shaky phones. Spartan Race had a French national series doing their live stream, and it was actually on Facebook Live or Facebook Watch or whatever it's called, which I thought was really cool because I actually messaged Toughest and they said that they don't have a Facebook Live page because they can't do it in the U.S. It's only in the U.S. or something. I take it because Spartan has already got theirs established in the United States. Maybe that's how they got theirs from France going. I don't know. But nonetheless, it was really cool to see another overseas race that we're getting to watch here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you really don't ever get to see what goes on overseas. You always hear about it, but unless you actually go there yourself, you don't ever actually really get to see the race action over there.
Yeah, I like to watch darts, and it's a more so European thing, the dart championships, and they do Facebook Live, and it comes on. You get a notification when they go live, and it's a really highly produced, very good show. So it's cool getting to see something that otherwise, I don't have Sky Sports or whatever it is they have out there to watch that kind of stuff.
And I'm surprised Spartan didn't do a Facebook Live of Montana, because there was still some pretty big names as far as elites competing at that one too. And I think it was Amelia's first race back. I saw it on Instagram, on their Instagram stories.
Well, I think it's because it was a mountain race, right? It wasn't the national series.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe they'll expand it next year to more races. So Tough Mudder on Saturday had their kind of shaky phone footage out too. So somebody out there. Actually, I don't think it was a shaky phone. I think they just had it focused on one obstacle at a time. Like they had it at Everest for a while, and then they had it at Loch Ness Monster for a while.
Yeah, at all the big obstacles.
They didn't do the tougher with Matt B. Davis and E-Rock on the couch. They didn't do that. but they did have some live footage, which was really neat. Like it's nice to see all this live footage coming from all over the place. It makes it really exciting each weekend.
Makes it very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, even when you can't be part of it, you get to
watch
feel
it
like
with
you're taking
envy.
part. Have you signed up for a Spartan race this year?
I have. I'm doing Austin. We're going back to Austin next weekend for the Sprint and Super weekend. So at Reveille Peak Ranch.
So you signed up for a Spartan.
Mm-hmm.
So that must have automatically qualified you to go to Iceland, right?
Oh yeah, I signed up for the Ultra Beast too. Yeah, apparently I'm qualified to go to Tahoe and Worlds and everything else.
No, I heard. I surprisingly have not seen the memes out there, but Mike Stefano on his most recent podcast was talking about the different memes for you know, did something simple and it got you a qualification for Iceland. Like everybody's qualifying.
Exactly. Which, you know, it's funny because all those emails that everybody else was getting, qualifying them for Worlds, like to go to the World Championships, and it was at the beginning of the year, or Trifecta Championships or something like that, and everybody who finished at Trifecta last year got emails inviting them to. I did like 3 Trifectas last year and I never got that email. I'm a little hurt by that, but apparently I'm okay enough to go to Iceland.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that people are saying that it seemed like it was too easy, but I don't know if everybody's email said that they qualified for elite, but the elite qualification was to finish in under 10 hours, which was not a far stretch. Like I did it in Dallas and I did it in under 8 hours. And honestly, I felt pretty rough the second half of the race too.
Right. Well, the longer Ultra Beast though, I know Daniel and some of our friends tried doing the one in Tahoe, and that one was rough. Let me tell you.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
I just did 1 lap in Tahoe. I just did the Beast. I wasn't even signed up for the Ultra Beast, but I just did the Beast lap, and that took me almost, I think, 6 hours just to do 1 lap. So
yeah, Tahoe's pretty crazy.
I think it was like close to 17 miles or something crazy like that. Like it was insane.
It gets longer every year.
But yeah, I was kind of confused too as far as what exactly qualified me to go to Iceland, because I mean, whenever I did my Ultra Beast in Dallas last year, I was signed up and competitive, and then whenever I checked my results at the end of the race, I ended up finishing like 8th in my age group or something like that. So I figured it was something like that qualified you for elite.
What was your time?
It was less than 10 hours.
That's probably what it was.
More than likely.
Even though you were signed up for competitive, I guess it still qualified you.
Yeah.
Out of those memes that Mike Stefano was talking about, my favorite one was one of Oprah Winfrey saying, "You get a
you get an
Iceland qualification. You get an Iceland qualification. Everybody gets a qualification."
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. I think everybody got that email, which, I mean, is nothing to say, nothing to diminish what you did in the Ultra Beast last year, but I think they just want a lot more people to come to Iceland, which, I mean, if I could go and if I could make it happen, then I would go, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, they're obviously just trying to make it successful, because I'm sure they paid a ton of money. Actually, watching the live stream before the race last year, I think Joe DeSena said it was like $1 million that it cost them to put it on.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it was not cheap by any means.
Yeah. And there's no way they got that many. They had enough people to pay for that.
No way. No way. If I could go, it's just at a bad time of year.
How many people went? I think they only had like 1,000 as a...
Yeah, if that. Like participant-wise.
1,000 was like the limit, I believe. Wasn't the price on it like $700 or something?
Yeah,
crazy?
the race entry fee just for the ultra is $750. What? $750.99. So $751.
Even that is not enough to completely cover their Spartan's cost.
Definitely not.
Maybe they're trying to up that. Well, anything else to say before we get on to probably the longest recap to ever exist?
I don't think so. There's really
nothing
else
I don't really care anymore.
Yeah, if there is, then obviously it's not really important enough for me to remember to talk about.
All right, so this past weekend was the Tough Mudder Central Texas weekend, and they had the first toughest race of the year because Toughest LA was canceled due to the weather that they had out there. So it was Toughest South. Last year, Toughest South was in Atlanta, I believe.
I think so. Because I looked
Which
at
is
that
kinda
race
funny.
last year.
Because Atlanta and Austin are very, very far apart.
And very different
Yeah.
as far as terrain goes.
It's funny, as much as you talk about the South, obviously Texas is, but it's a borderline west, parts of
Yeah.
Texas for sure.
Texas is just its own territory. There's like the Midwest and the East Coast and the West Coast and the South, and then there's Texas.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how I see it.
We're going to break this up into some different segments so that we don't kind of lose track of what we're talking about.
Get squirreled.
Yeah, let's talk about the winners first, and then we'll go through like the venue, just some of the obstacles, and then the gear we use, and then we'll share our stories. So first off, the winners. On the guys' side, you had Ryan Atkins,
Of course.
who got 45 miles. I do believe he finished. Yeah, it says Ryan's last lap time, or at the end of his last lap, was 7:33. And he was at 45 miles, and obviously, he knew he had time because the second place guy, Sean Stevens Whale, was still on course, so he didn't have to go back out for another lap. Now, last year, they had that extra bonus pricing for $5,000 for everybody that hit 50 miles. Or not everybody, but the first person to hit 50 miles. And so he didn't do that because they didn't have that pricing this year, which is interesting.
This might be one of his bigger, not his A race, I would say, but, probably one of his better races that he wants to perform at this year going into Worlds. But I don't think you'd really want to completely kill yourself too early in the year.
Right. No point in pushing it just because
you
look
can.
Cool. It's not like he's never proven that he can,
Right.
Obviously,
there's no question in
can.
anybody's mind. Yeah. There's no question in anybody's mind if he can or can't. Like, everybody knows he can. So
yeah.
I think he made the right choice.
But Sean Stevens Whale got second. He finished after the time cut off to start your last lap, so he was at 45 miles as well. He is a tower runner. Have you ever heard about that?
I heard Matt B. Davis talking about him. I heard him saying how he's not really one of the well-known names in OCR right now, but yeah, he's a tower runner, so he just runs up and down towers.
Yeah, just running stairs.
Yeah.
And Matt B. Davis actually mentioned on his most recent episode that Sean Stevens Whale is going to be at a Red Bull 400, which is one of those races where they run up a ski slope.
For 400 meters.
Not a ski slope, a ski jump. Like they actually run up where the skiers fly down.
It's supposed to be like, the hardest 400 meters in the world to run.
Yeah. So I would imagine he probably does pretty good at that since that's kind of his thing.
Yeah. Those hills were nothing to him.
But for him to come into Tough Mudder and compete the way he has is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I like the fact that a lot of OCRs are reaching out, and I heard Adrian Bijanata talking about this with Hunter on Obstacle Dominator, how like they're trying to reach out to ultra runners and trail runners and things like that, and how we're OCR is kind of branching out and kind of appealing to more types of athletes, because a lot of the people that got into Tough Mudder were triathletes prior to getting into Tough Mudder, because I think the first Tough Mudder was like you had to qualify to compete in a Tough Mudder.
Maybe, I think for the first Worlds, first couple Worlds possibly.
Yeah, first world stuff is. So I mean, it definitely appealed to the triathletes and the people that ran Ironman and everything like that. But now it's branching out to a lot more kinds of athletes.
In third place was Brian Gowitzki, who I know I've heard the name, but I kind of recognize him, but not a ton. Do you recognize him more than I do?
He's been popping up on the radar a lot more. I had seen him, but I could never the ones that you never really hear too much about, like they're kind of in the background. They kind of make a little noise in the background, on the podium every now and again. I mean, he's been making more podiums here recently too. But yeah, I've always heard his name, but I could never be certain if I was putting the right face with the right name. So, but yeah, I had recently read some stuff about him. He had been doing a lot of interviews and everything, and whenever I started seeing his picture and everything, whenever we were in the pit area, I was like, oh, that's Brian Gowitzki right across from us.
Yeah, and he got 45 miles as well, and he finished at 8:23, it says. So just 8:23 and 50 seconds. So just over 6 minutes left before the time cutoff, which is pretty cool. Robert Wiltshire at 4th with 40 miles, and Christopher Mendoza at 5th with 40 miles. So only three people got 45. Those top 3 guys, which is.
Are you gonna play Chris Mendoza?
I don't have it.
You don't have a clip of his theme song?
We'll leave that for Will.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's a good testament to how tough the course was, which obviously we'll talk more about. But it was a tough course, and people weren't just flying all over the place.
Yeah, I kind of underestimated the single track.
All right, so on the women's side, Rhea Coble took first, which is pretty amazing. Like, she was, I think, being chased down by Allison Ty and Lindsay Webster, but she kept at it and kept strong. Got 40 miles and finished. She finished at 7:45. So the cutoff for starting that last lap is 7:45, and she literally crossed 10 seconds after. Did you see the video? Somebody posted a video.
Mm-mm.
It showed her come down from happy ending and like start walking towards the finish, and you could hear them counting down in the background. You hear the horn, and then she's like, "Woo!" She lets out this big old shout and then crosses the finish line because she didn't have to do anymore.
I think I was out on trail whenever I heard that horn go off. I was like, "Thank goodness."
But yeah, if you go look for, I forget where that video popped up. It was Yancey Culp was filming doing live streaming for ORM.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Allison Ty put in a huge effort trying to chase her down, and I think really kind of had that gap, kind of close. I think, again, watching Yancey Culp's videos, she had the gap down to like 2 minutes, even towards the end of the race.
Yeah, whenever I was on my last lap and Rhea had passed me for like the second time. The gator drove by and everything, and I heard somebody shouting at her that Allison was like 2 minutes behind her.
So Allison Ty got 40 miles as well. Lindsay Webster got third with 35 miles. I know she had finished a little earlier. I think she had her spot locked up, and I believe maybe she was just, feeling rough in her legs or something. So she stopped there and took home third place, and good for her.
And then fourth place was a local one. Well,
yep.
Local elite. Alexandra Walker. She finished with 35 miles too.
Where is she from?
I think she's in Austin. I know she's in Lone Star.
Yeah.
But I believe she's in Austin because she trains with Yancey. And that was her first toughest event. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that was her very first Tough Mudder toughest competitive event.
That's awesome.
Which she's an awesome runner.
Congrats
she's
to her.
Like stinking fast.
Who got fifth?
Fifth place, that was up in the air because I remember Will talking about it too, because you couldn't really tell who got fifth.
That's right. Do we know yet?
I don't think so. I don't think there's been any updates to that because I didn't get.
I'm going to check real quick.
Because the times on the timing on their results page was off, or you couldn't tell or something.
I mean, it shows Adrian Alvord being fifth and Margaret Cattarelli. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, so it was between those two.
But, so I think I see the discrepancy is that it shows it shows Adrian Alvord with 34 miles and Margaret with 31 miles.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Okay. All right. So I guess we still don't know.
So I'm going to say it's Adrian just because.
Weird. Okay. All right. Tough Mudder. I guess we'll wait for, make sure you check out Will Hicks' next podcast, episode on the World's Toughest Podcast.
Straightened out with
he'll have it figured out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that was really awesome. Obviously we got to see them run by us multiple times and see them at the finish and whatnot, and see them on the podium, shaking up their champagne and doing all that. That was a good time. Of course, I know, I wasn't really watching the podium ceremony because I was about dead. But
yeah, I think I missed it too.
So the venue itself, what did you think about just the place where they held it, the trails, and let's say the village area?
The village area, the village area was pretty simple. I mean, there wasn't really anything special to the village area. It was your basic, here's your rinse station and porta potties and all that. And then they had, like, the vendor tent set up closer to the finish line. Yeah, they had Meryl there.
Meryl with the shoes.
Mm-hmm. And I did like that they had the happy ending obstacle right at the finish where you could where the spectators could access it, and then
Mm-hmm.
the spectator trail where they could go watch obstacles. You could definitely see a lot more of the cooler obstacles. Like, I think their trail, you could walk by Kong, and you could walk by Rope-a-Dope and Everest, and I think maybe there was one more. I mean, the bigger ones that everybody would want to see, you could go walk by and kind of camp out and watch. So I thought that was cool.
And one of the obviously one of the biggest things about this race that was really interesting is how heavy obstacle wise the end of the race was. So that's where all the obstacles was at towards the finish, where the spectators could go see them.
Yeah, which I wouldn't have had a problem with it being so obstacle heavy at the end, but just the amount of water that you had to go through and everything, it killed me. Like, I'm surprised. I'm really surprised I did not make it across Kong. Like, what? They're rings. Like,
well, there's different reasons for that, which we'll get into. But but yeah, I mean, the venue, that piece of property, I thought was really cool in that it was, generally flat compared to probably a lot of other venues.
Right.
But it still had some little inclines that...
Yeah, and little climbs.
That push you. Yeah, little climbs here and there.
Oh, I loved the trail. I liked it. There was a lot of roots and a lot of rocky areas. You definitely had to watch your step.
The village area wasn't as lively, so we don't really, being there at night, we don't really know the full experience of what... Yeah, so we didn't see that part of it. But the pit area for Toughest was cool because it was that big tent that was completely enclosed. It had a couple openings to get in and out of, but it actually held in heat from all the people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so while it was slightly chilly outside, when you went in there, it felt pretty good.
Yeah.
The course itself went from kind of just like, a dirt road, pretty tricky dirt road, like a lot of it would, a regular car wouldn't be able to get through kind of thing. But after a ways of that, it did have those trails that went up into the woods, single track trails. And yeah, those were pretty fun. They were pretty twisty, and I mean, even they got muddy after a while from the sheer amount of people that ran through there
multiple times. I will say this about the beginning of that trail, whenever they sent us off, was going through that fence whenever it bottlenecked, like right at the beginning. Everybody trying to get through that opening in the fence. Like, I was running and I was like, oh wait, I have to slow down now. But once you got past that, you were golden.
But it was a lot of running in the beginning. And then you hit those, a lot of mud. Like, it felt like there was a good length of muddy course. And then you hit the trails, and then it was, of course, muddy on the trails at points too. But then when you got out of the trails, you went through that creek. The funny thing about it is they had an obstacle, quote unquote, called Creek Crusade, I believe it was. But it was actually like a crossing at a pond. But then there was an actual creek where you walk through that took you, a good 7 minutes to walk down. I mean, that was a long ways for the creek.
It was a proper creek.
I loved hearing on Will's episode that he put out right after the event where he was talking to Rhea Coble, and she said that she heard that there was copperheads in there.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad you're telling me this now.
Like, I don't know if anybody saw any, but, it's not surprising.
Any.
I mean, we are down in Texas in creeks.
And I mean,
I wouldn't be
it's always in the back of my mind. There were a few times I would walk through that creek and I felt a log, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to move over here now.
But then once you get out of the trails, you kind of got out into some open fields, and those open fields, some of them had, ever so slight inclines that, again, if you just ran those, it kind of drains you a little bit. And then towards the end of that is where you hit the big gauntlet of obstacles, and then the finish.
Yeah, there were some sneaky inclines too, like really soft inclines. Like, you would be running and then you'd realize you're running uphill.
Yeah. So overall, I liked the venue.
Yeah.
I thought that the parking was good. The festival area, for a night was good. And the course itself was just a fun place to run.
Yeah, I liked the course. I liked how it was set up.
The mud was tricky. It was tough, but I mean, it made for a challenging good time.
That's one thing I can't. I'm sorry. I just did not like the mud that just like sucks you in, and like there's no way.
Yeah.
Like I even saw Alexandra Walker. She couldn't even run through that. Like I don't. There's no way anyone could run through that.
I feel like I was running through it on like the first lap or maybe two.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then, as I got tired, it was just like, no.
Right. Well, and then it just got worse as the night went on because of how many people were going through it so many times.
And the funniest part about it to me was running at night. You can't. It's real tough to see, especially with my dim headlamp that I had. It was real tough to see where the mud was and where it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it's not like you could see from a distance and say, "Oh, all right, I'm gonna run over there." It's like where you went is about all the option you had.
Yeah.
So you just kind of had to go ahead and go for it. But once the sun rose, I saw paths, and it's like, oh, you can run right there. It's not so muddy.
Yeah, at
if
night.
I had known this all night.
Yeah, at night, and sometimes like the longer you run with that headlamp, your eyes just start playing tricks on you. Like you, it might look like a good spot, but you really can't tell. You can't distinguish like the soft mud from like the harder packed mud that you can run on, and so you like step in a spot and you just like up to your knee in mud.
Jar yourself.
Yeah, and you're just stuck. But yeah, and it's crazy because the same thing happened with me whenever the sun came up. I was like, oh my gosh, I could have been running like this the whole night.
And the creek was, those small pebbles, that sandy, rocky.
Yeah.
Get in your shoes instantly the second you step in it, kind of.
Oh, yes.
And you went like in the water and out of the water, sometimes like up to your chest or your neck, depending on how tall you are.
Yeah.
Sometimes you were on the gravel beach.
I was running on the gravel beach. Whenever I was going through the creek, I think the deepest the water got was, and I'm 5'2", so the deepest the water got was like almost up to my chest, like barely up to my collarbone, but it was pretty deep.
The obstacles. Obviously, very back heavy on the course. Yeah. First off, the fact that it was night, I mean, we obviously have mentioned how wet it was because of there was, rain like a couple days before, so it was a lot of mud, a lot of water that they put us through, and it was nighttime in high humidity. So everything was just wet, just automatically.
Right.
So so talking about any of the obstacles, it was wet.
Yeah,
like every single one of them was.
You couldn't dry your hands on anything. Nothing. But for those that don't know, so like the first lap, we didn't have to go through any obstacles. The obstacles started opening up, what was it, maybe 45 minutes after we started?
Yeah, and they actually rolled out the obstacles too. Like on my second lap, I know I actually missed or got to bypass at least Block Ness Monster and Funky Monkey.
Yeah, because I didn't get to do Rope It Up until my third lap.
But yeah, early on they had like Quagmire and Trench Warfare and Block Ness Monster and some of that stuff. Cage Crawl, which was fun.
Yeah, pretty much all the obstacles, the first lap were closed except for Devil's Beard and Pitfall.
Devil's Beard, which was in the creek, like in a dry spot in the creek. Pitfall was right after you got out of the creek.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you did go through it on the first lap. You had all that, and then after the creek, I want to say after Block Ness Monster, after maybe even Mud Mile, I forget exactly where everything was, even though we did it as many times as we did. But then there was just the tip, which was the first grip-intensive obstacle, which was, in my personal opinion, the hardest one there.
Was that the one they said only 18 people completed it?
I do believe. And it's so crazy because that's not that hard of an obstacle.
It really isn't.
For one, if it's dry, it's just, it's pretty easy. It's easier than Funky Monkey.
Yeah.
But not only was it wet, so when you get through the board part of it, and for those that haven't seen it yet, it's, like a 2x4 kind of, you kind of shimmy along the 2x4 hanging down from it. And then there's a middle section with the trailer hitches, like a ball from a trailer hitch on a truck sticking out, and then a metal rod, a metal peg, and then another trailer hitch, metal peg, trailer hitch, and then it goes back to the boards. So I did that in New Orleans, and it was easy. This one, so not only was all that wet, the metal was wet, but they also had it to where the whole thing could rotate and it
Yeah.
twist. So when you hung on it, it rotated down towards you.
Yeah. So as
Which was
soon as you
crazy.
grabbed onto that first ledge, it would shift. It wasn't stable. It wasn't just locked into one spot.
Right, and to me, that's what made it the hardest one. Like, if it didn't rotate, even being wet, it would have been tough, but I think it still would have been, it would have gotten accomplished more.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty good with my grip and stuff, but I didn't get it one time. Because when it rotated towards you, you're literally grabbing the trailer hitch ball and the metal peg, you literally are just slipping away from it because it's hanging kind of down.
Yeah.
So, pretty much once I got to those, I had no chance.
Yeah, every time I came to that obstacle, except for my last lap, because I got on it and then I'm like, no. But all the other laps before that, I got onto the ledge, and I'm shorter, so I had to grab part of the scaffolding and kind of grab that and launch my way up to grab onto the ledge. So as soon as I was grabbing onto something, it was moving, it was shifting, and that was like so frustrating to me. But I would make it all the way down, and I made it to that first trailer hitch, and like as soon as I grabbed it, my hand slipped off of it. Like I felt like I had a good grip on it. So had it been either dry or stable, I think I would have at least gotten further than I had.
Yeah, the wood was not that bad. Even being wet, it was still pretty easy.
Yeah, the wood really wasn't that bad.
Definitely the wet metal just made it so hard.
And yeah, and the second time around, the spacing between, like, you had to grab that trailer hitch ball. You couldn't, there was no way you could, like, my second time I did that obstacle, I tried doing the whole, like, kind of swing and get momentum and maybe, like, swing myself up to that metal peg, because I knew, if anything, I could grab that metal peg, but, I mean, I fell.
Yeah, well, I feel like if you could have got to the peg and then to the other peg, maybe.
Right.
But the trailer hitch balls were they were really hard.
They were unavoidable, and they were really hard to grab onto.
I would like to see if anybody got footage of Ryan Atkins doing it, because they said that he made it past.
Oh, I'm sure he probably made it look easy, too.
Trench Warfare and Cage Crawl right after it. Cage Crawl was nice chance to get off your feet and just lay back. You got to go under the fence, which are, being claustrophobic. Some people have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Having your face so close out of the water, because there's literally 6 inches or so.
If that.
But, I know you said the same. I just took it as it was and laid back and relaxed for a minute.
My first time, I did that my second time through it. My first time through it, I'm like, I'm not claustrophobic. I'm just, whatever. I didn't really think very much of it. And so I didn't really have a strategy either. Because there is kind of a little bit of a strategy you want to have going into that, just so, it doesn't mess with your head, I think. So as I'm climbing up my first lap, as I'm climbing up the chain link fence and making my way down the obstacle and just floating along and everything, I'm just going along, and there was a point in there where the next section of fences was lower. So I wasn't prepared for that, and like my head went under a little bit and I kind of started to panic, and like I came back up and like I was like, holy cow, and I just started going faster trying to get past the obstacle. So I'm like, okay, I didn't like that very much, but it wasn't that bad. So my next time through it, I found the metal pole that goes all the way down and that connects the chain link fences.
Yeah,
I found that in the middle, and I lined myself up with that, and I just followed the metal pole going down. I think
you
what
still
happened.
Weren't grabbing that, right? Were you grabbing
I was just grabbing the fence, right?
But you were looking at the pole.
Exactly, just to make sure I was going in a straight line and I wasn't like zigzagging everywhere, because I think that's what happened my first time, is that like I was kind of zigzagging and I wasn't going quite in a straight line. So in my head I was like, golly, how long is this obstacle? Like, am I done yet? But no, after that, once I had that going for me, I was looking forward to that obstacle every single lap.
Yeah, I found that I wanted to kind of lean my head back and look towards the end of the obstacle so I could see the end coming. But the more I did that, the more water would like splash in my eyes. So I just looked, straight up, kept my head level, and just kept on pulling until there was no more fence to grab.
Yeah. And I keep telling everybody too, like, that obstacle was oddly therapeutic. Like, just to be there, and your ears are underwater, so all you can do is just look up at the moon while you're floating there and just listen to yourself breathing. It's like a meditative exercise.
Yeah, it's like one of those levitating chambers.
Exactly. But yeah, it was so nice to get off my feet for the 30 seconds that it took to do that obstacle.
And I don't know if you ever bothered to kind of put your feet down, but it's only like 2 feet deep. It's it's not very deep at all.
And I remember listening to, I can't remember, I think it was either Will or Matt's podcast.
Yeah.
Was it Will Hicks? That, you know, for people who do get claustrophobic, like, don't freak out. All you have to do is, like, get on your knees and stand up, and the fences will pop up. So
they're not nailed down on you.
Yeah, they're not actually trapping you in. But no, I liked that obstacle a lot, even though the water was still nasty, but that's another thing.
Mud Mile 2.0 was not, I found it to not be that bad because there was enough ruts in it that I found the spots where I could do it myself. And every single time I went to the same spot in the corner, you could kind of put your hands on both sides of the corner and lift yourself up enough to get a foot in and just pull yourself out. So
yeah, I think
not
for the
too
most
bad
part,
there.
people did that. People were able to do that one on their own. I think there was a few spots, especially as the night went on. A few people were just having having trouble picking themselves up over the hills. So
Loch Ness Monster, middle of the night. Obviously, you don't have a ton of people there, so it's very interesting when you get there.
Yeah.
And I know so many times, like seeing, there's a person in the water, there's another person ahead of you, there's a person behind you, and it's like everybody starts rushing to get there at the same time.
And I will tell you, the first time I got stuck at that obstacle by myself, and there was nobody in sight. and the poor lifeguard, like, he's just looking at me like he wants to help me, but he just looks at me and was like, uh-oh. I was like, yeah, uh-oh is right. Like, how am I going to do this?
So did you just have to wait until somebody got
Oh, yeah.
there?
I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to jump in and see if I can do this myself. But, I mean, eventually people showed up. But then it happened again on my next lap. and the lifeguard was like, man, you just have really bad timing.
Yeah.
But my next lap, it wasn't as bad. Well, I say that. It wasn't as bad on my next lap because people weren't as far behind me. But there was a guy that was behind me that came through and, like, just blasted through without even offering to help me. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to float here then.
So the water is, obviously it's probably different heights. They try to make it the same, I'm sure, but it's different heights at different events. But it's typically, and it was here, deep enough to where, unless you're a really tall person, you can't just jump out of the water and grab the top of the block and pull yourself up.
And I feel like the first block was deeper.
Yeah, so it's tough when you're by yourself. You can't get enough force out of the water. Even though you can touch the ground, you're just so deep in the water, you can't reach up that high to grab it.
Yeah, and those blocks are heavy. Yeah, because
took
my second lap,
several people to move them.
Yeah, there was only like maybe 3 or 4 of us that ended up trying to move the block to get people over, and even the 4 of us, like, it was like me and maybe 3 other guys. It took some effort to rotate that block. Oh well, on that guy that just blasted through, but it's okay. I understand. It's a competition, but.
So after that, the gauntlet of obstacles towards the end. Am I missing anything before Rope-a-Dope?
Not really. I don't think so, anyway.
They had, I'd say, a version of Turducken, which was get in the water, climb over a hill. There was no pipe to slide through, but you slid down into the water, and then there was a log to climb over, and then there was a log to go under. So you had to get completely submerged to complete that one.
There was Kiss of Mud, but we went through that on the first lap.
Yeah, Kiss of Mud was nothing out of the ordinary. It had plenty of water in it. It wasn't super deep, but it had spots that were deep. So it was.
You couldn't roll through it, though. Bad. I tried rolling through it my first time, and I'm like, oh, that's a deep spot. Can't roll through that. You kind of had to army crawl.
Just sink in it.
I think there was a few guys that got their tights caught on because of mud though, because I had to tell a few guys later on later on in the race.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if anybody's told you yet, but you've got a hole in your tights.
Well, so one thing about the course that I thought was, I know some people would easily complain about a back end loaded course because the front end of the course just feels like a lot of running, and it was, but I enjoyed it because it gave me a easy marker to be like, I've got all this distance out of the
Yeah.
way, and now that I'm at Rope-A-Dope, now that I've come out of the creek and done all this stuff, I'm at Rope-A-Dope. I know I've only got what from Rope-A-Dope there was not even a half mile left or something.
Yeah, a lot of the running, it made it go by so fast. Made the miles go by so fast.
Yeah, so once you got to the hard obstacles, it was
Yeah.
I'm almost done, and it made it easier than just getting beat down the whole time, I thought.
Yeah, because I feel like if you have spread out obstacles, yeah, it's kind of nice to break up the running a little bit, but then it's kind of like the slow grind on your grip and your endurance and everything.
So Rope-A-Dope was the version where you climb up the rope and you go down the diagonal rope on the other side. Now, the trench that you have to, I think during regular Tough Mudder, they have to just jump
Yeah.
and swing across. But it's not a short jump to get to the rope.
Yeah, it still messes with your head.
Yeah, it's not crazy far, but it's definitely far enough that's like, am I going to make it
Yeah,
if I
you
jump?
definitely
or-
second guess yourself. You're like, okay, how
Mhm.
how high do I have to jump? How far do I have to jump? And then you're standing on this platform that has like a little plastic lip on it, and you're like,
That little lip.
yeah, what if I
Well,
slip
I think
on
it's for
that?
safety.
Exactly.
Right. It's but you're like, am I going to trip on this? as
Yeah, am I gonna
jump off?
slip? Am I gonna jump and then my foot's just gonna slip and I'm gonna land in the water? Like, yeah, the rope is definitely just far enough out for you to second guess yourself.
Those ropes, they are either weighted or tied down in the water, so they're not slack like a normal rope.
Yeah.
So when you go to use your feet and get a foothold on the rope, it does not give like a normal rope would. Now, I felt like doing a J-hook motion
Mhm.
still was able to give me enough grip to put my weight on it and help, alleviate my grip on my hands. It definitely makes it tougher, for sure.
Yeah. And the
I
first
mean,
time
it makes it toughest.
Yeah. See what you did there. So the first time I went through Rope-A-Dope, I didn't know there was a penalty that I could have done. Because the guy, so I thought it was
So, like, you thought you
I
had
thought
to
it was a
complete it?
mandatory completion obstacle. Because I went up to it and I asked the volunteer, I was like, so what do we do here? Like, I just have to jump out and grab the rope, climb up and climb down? He's like, yeah. And I was like, is there a penalty I can take just in case I don't make it? And he never answered me. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. So
I feel like I asked as well, and he like never gave me a straight answer.
right.
and-
So like, was he not allowed to tell us or what? but and then he was like, well, it's easy. Just jump out and grab the rope. I'm like, yeah, it's easy because you're not doing it. So and that was my third lap, and I was already having issues on my third lap. So I was already like starting to get a little beat down. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. I'm like, and at first I was like, okay, rope climb, whatever. I've done, how many rope climbs have I done? I mean, really. So I get on the rope, and it's thicker. It's a lot thicker of a rope than like, say, a Spartan rope. And it's that synthetic material, so it's
Yeah.
really slippery.
You thought it was slippery?
I think it was more slippery than some of the other ropes they had on the course. Because I think that
Really?
that synthetic, it didn't really absorb all the water. So I feel like whenever I grabbed onto it, but my hands are a lot smaller than yours. But whenever I grabbed onto it,
That's true.
whenever I grabbed onto it, like the material didn't like absorb the water. It just kind of sat there.
So they are those black ropes, and I know what you mean by the synthetic, and I don't feel like they're as slippery as some other synthetic ropes. On Everest and the ropes
Happy Ending.
on Happy Ending, they're more that
Twine
I don't know,
or something. Yeah.
manila. Those can get really slippery, especially on Everest. I think they were really slippery, but I honestly felt like I had a really good grip despite those ropes being completely soaked.
On Rope-A-Dope. See, and I didn't have any problem. I felt more I felt more comfortable on the ropes on Everest and on Happy Ending than I did on Rope-a-Dope, which
Huh.
is weird, but I don't know. So whenever I made it up, I used my J-hook, but it was it's a sad J-hook. So I just kind of muscled my way up that rope, and then I made it down the traverse rope, which I just slid down. Is that what you did?
Yeah, just leg over and hand over hand to controlled slide.
So that's how I did it, and I made it across, and then the stupid mud mound that was after it, I couldn't even make it up that after I completed the stupid obstacle because it was so the mud was just soupy right there that you couldn't.
Yeah, so from all the people coming out of the water, that mud hill that they had dug the hole from was just about the hardest part of the
and
obstacle.
I made it like halfway up, and I slipped and I fell and I slid back down. I'm like, what the heck? I can make it up that rope, but I can't make it over this like 2-foot mound. But
it was smooth.
Right.
Like there was no like stepping spots where people.
Yeah, and even if you like dug your fingers or your shoes into it, like it was all just loose. So the first time I went over it, whenever I finally made my way over that little mud hill, I saw the penalty lap, and I was like, oh, dang it. I was like, well, at least I could say I completed it.
Speaking of penalty laps, I know that's something that I think everybody kind of agreed with, that the penalty laps weren't crazy. They weren't, half a mile long.
No,
or
not at
anything.
all.
Some of them had a distance on them, but they weren't anything terribly bad. Especially not the penalty on
Just the tip.
Just the tip. Its penalty was very short and made me very happy. It was as short as it was.
Yeah, and I feel like the penalty laps, they weren't crazy long or anything. And even Everest was the only penalty lap that had something to it. Like you had to do a sandbag carry at Everest, which the sandbags weren't even really that heavy whenever you compare them to other races that have heavy carries.
Yeah, they were heavy enough that at that point in the day, it was just heavy enough that I didn't want to run with it at that point in the point in the race.
I made it up Everest, I think twice, and then after that, I'm like, I'm done. I tried every single time, but it's like, I'll just take the penalty. I can run with the sandbag.
So before Everest was Kong, and they had, as they have been having at the other races, Kong Infinity within the middle of the rig, and regular just rings on the side. And it, they stopped making it this big, grandiose, scary thing because that mat underneath is pretty close to you. Whereas when they first introduced Kong at Worlds in 2016, it was
a drop.
A big drop. I mean, it was at least a 10-foot drop to the mat. So I'm pretty sure it's because people got hurt on that, but it takes away a fear. But obviously, if it's actually hurting people, that's no good. They can't have that. So now, one thing about the obstacles at this race that I thought was cool was instead of making the obstacles easier throughout the night, they actually made them harder.
Did. And it wasn't because you were just tired from running all night. They were harder obstacles.
So Kong, again, wet rings.
Especially coming out of Rope-a-Dope.
And I didn't bother trying to go one hand on one ring because I didn't want to risk slipping. So I just went 2 hands at a time and had no problems with it like that, even though it was wet. Now, I did try to find something to put my hands on at first, dirt or
everything
grass
was wet.
Anything. Yeah, nothing mattered. So at towards the end, I was just like, screw it, and just went with my wet hands, and it was, I was able to handle it. Oh, we passed up Funky Monkey.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even talk about Funky Monkey. Holy cow, how did we miss that one?
All right, we'll come back to it in a second. All right, so Kong, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning that they finally turned it to Kong Infinity. And they did allow towards the very, very end to do regular Kong just to, kind of get through it fast. But when it was Kong Infinity, it was, since it was wet, again, it was even harder. The one time that I did tried Kong Infinity, I fell right before I got, or right at the monkey bars. I think I just didn't quite go far enough and slipped. Yeah, it was, they made that tougher. We're going to come back to Everest in a second, but it got tougher later on in the night too. So let's jump back. So back further in the course, before just the tip even.
It was before just the tip.
It was after cage crawl, which meant you were soaking wet, like you just got out the water. Funky Monkey was called Funky Tough on the map.
It was called Funky Tough on the map, and then whenever you got to the race, it was Spunky Monkey.
So they had taken, the monkey bars that are normally on Funky Monkey, they had taken a big piece of wood and laid it on top of the monkey bars, and underneath the wood had those handicap rails that you find like in the bathroom. So pretty thick. Some of them were thicker than others, but the trickiest part about it to me was that the distance from that wood to the edge of the bar was, what do you say?
Yeah.
2 inches, 3 inches maybe at the most.
The spacing between the bar and the wood was just, it was small.
It was tricky. Like you really had to focus on how you, when you grabbed it, making sure you didn't jam your hands into the wood, or like I actually had my finger get caught instead of, like I had to reset my hand. And they were at angles too. They weren't straight like monkey bars. They were at diagonal angles, at alternating diagonal angles
with the
too.
whole set of monkey bars going uphill at an incline.
Now, you couldn't grab the monkey bars because the wood was right on top of it, but they were in your way still. So that was tricky. And it's funny because so many times throughout the night, from a distance, I saw it and it looked like they had taken the wood off. And I was like, yes, they made it just monkey bars. And then I got to it and it wasn't. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I looked at it and I had to like process it in my head for a second. And like I saw all these guys like just falling like flies, and I'm like, oh man. And I'm already like psyching myself up, and I'm like, okay, just take it slow, take it easy. So the first time I made it to like the second wheel, and then I tried to chicken wing it, and I fell because I slipped.
Oh, that's impressive. That's awesome that you made it that far.
Yeah,
because
no
it was
females
tough.
made it
It
through
really
that.
was, with them at an angle, wet, uphill. Yeah, not even the ones that won made it through it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But uphill, you had to, you know how people do that kind of sideways grip on monkey bars to make it a little easier? That's kind of the only option that I felt I really had. And it worked.
I went backwards on the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the monkey bars, because I find that sometimes if you have to go, if the monkey bars are at an upwards incline like that, it's almost easier whenever you swing your body. It's almost easier to like get your momentum to reach up for that next bar.
Yeah, I definitely had to do some swinging for sure to really reach out to the next one, since they were at alternating angles like that. But I felt sideways worked really well for me. I don't know. I felt like I was able to get more of a reach doing it that way. I did fall once. I just didn't hang on tight enough on the wheel.
Yeah.
And fell. But I got it, like I fell, mid-race, and then got it the 2 times after that, which made me super excited.
Yeah. The first time whenever I fell, like that second wheel got stuck on me. Like it wouldn't move whenever
Wow.
The first time I grabbed it, like it would not move. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, I know I'm heavy enough to move this wheel. But it was just I had to like swing and like, yeah.
That was tough, and again, the penalty loop was not that bad. It was definitely longer than just the tip, but not that bad at all.
It really didn't take you too far behind some of the people that you were running with.
And then it led into Loch Ness Monster, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's jump back towards the finish of the race, the end of the course. Rope-a-dope, Kong, and then Everest. Everest, just, of course, slick as all get out. They had ropes down it. They were slick. Now, they did have hay at the bottom, I guess, for when you slide back down to fall into the hay. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did find that some of that hay underneath was dry.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I was able to dry my hands a little bit there. And during Yancey's videos, I did see that Ryan Atkins, he even used the hay a little bit.
Yeah. I made it up Everest once because ever since Tough Mudder New Orleans last year, whenever I didn't make it, and I tried that stupid thing, like, I don't know, maybe 5 times, and then I was done. I made it up once at Toughest, and that was partially because Sean was up there helping people and grabbing people up there. And so whenever I finally made it, so Everest was like my nemesis for the longest time, and whenever I finally made it up that thing, I was like, Sean, can I give you a hug? Like, I finally made it up this stupid thing. But it was awesome because he stayed up there all night just grabbing people, and then even whenever it switched over, so it was just like it was at Worlds. It was a shorter shorter height.
Everest 2.0.
Right, with the ropes, but then at the end it switched to the taller without the ropes. I don't think they had ropes.
Yeah, they had that extended high
Mhm.
section. Now, here's a couple of interesting things to me. The ropes, so since they have that curved top on there, the ropes are laying on that, so you can't once you get towards the top, you can't get your hands under
Yeah.
it. You really have to reach like over just the top of the rope and like kind of grab it, which is weird, but it makes it extra tough.
Yeah.
So whenever I got towards the top, I actually did that whole leg hooking thing
Mhm.
to help get the rest of the way up. And people were helping, of course, too. But that extended section, I didn't realize it. I only got to try it once because they had it open towards the end of the night. But it's actually a little bit of a warp wall. Like it actually
Mhm.
curves back. It's got an overhang on it.
Yeah.
I thought it just went straight up, which I figured I'd be able to do. Now, if it was dry, I'm sure I'd have
Oh,
no
yeah.
problem. But I never thought that I'd have an issue with it because I'm so used to running up that kind of stuff in half pipes, skateboard stuff. So if anybody's used to doing a warp wall, like for Ninja Warrior type stuff, it's the same thing. And it didn't overhang as much as a warp wall, I'd say, but it definitely did. And that kind of threw me off. Like I didn't realize it until I was literally running up the thing. I'd say that's the key is, get used to doing a warp wall. And even though, like on the regular Everest, even though it overhangs the way it curves up the way it does, you still just got to keep your head looking up as you run up it.
Mhm.
And you really can't lunge forward until the last second. Like you really got to just wait as long as
Yeah.
possible before you lunge
Yeah.
forward. It really was way up there. And when Ryan in that video dried his hands, there was two guys standing up there and reaching down for him, and even he didn't get high enough to grab the top. He grabbed their hands and they pulled him up, and then he grabbed the top and muscled up himself. But yeah, it's crazy how high it was, and being so slick, it's about near impossible to get up
Mhm.
that high.
It was super slick. I tried it every single time though.
The very last lap, I'd say I barely ran it and then just fell on my booty
Yeah.
and slid down. And it was like, well, I'm not gonna bother
Yeah.
because I'm almost at the end. This is done. So
Yeah, and I think I did the same thing on my last lap, and I was like, "I'll take my sandbag, please."
And so right after that was the last obstacle with
Mhm.
happy ending. So they had it where at Tough Mudder New Orleans, it was actually a built above ground pool at the front at the entrance to the obstacle. Here they actually had where it was dug into the ground. So you got in the water a little bit, climbed up on the wall, grabbed the rope, work your way up, and there was that trench in the middle before you
Mhm.
jump down the other side, which I thought was kind of funny. Like just a little bit of water there, just like a foot deep. It's there, I don't know why. But then you jump down the other side. Oh, so this they called it happy ending, happier ending. I
Mhm.
think
Happier.
That's what it was. Happy ending, slippery with wet, or happier ending maybe. So they had water spraying down it, which I liked. It was just not like super extra hard, just because walking up a slanted wall with a rope is
Yeah.
not that tough, but it just adds to the effect. I think kind of feels like going up a waterfall.
It wasn't that bad. Unless the person who climbed the rope ahead of you, this never happened to me, but unless the person ahead of you climbed the rope and like left it in a really crappy position and you couldn't reach the rope. I was pretty much using the same set of ropes all night long. I was using that middle
Yeah.
set of ropes all night long. And then for whatever reason, whenever I came up to it, it was just like all curled up towards the middle of the wall. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to use that one this time around. Oh, well.
And then you go over the backside and slide down, and some people, I think maybe Will Hicks was saying that it was kind of painful hitting the water down there. I definitely felt it one time where I just hit my butt weird, and it just, I don't know. Besides that, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it was really that bad. But I kind of slid down it with like one leg bent so I could like stay flat on the wall or have a foot on the wall just to kind of slow myself down a little bit.
That's true. I saw somebody else do that too. So here's a tip. Preferably don't put your hands on the boards as you slide down, because some of those boards,
uneven.
it's like masonite or something. Yeah, and the edges are not perfectly, this has been run on all day. The edges are not perfectly flush. And I one time was sliding down and my pinky finger went under it just a little bit.
Ouch.
And I felt it slice my finger. And it was not, it was middle of the night, so I was kind of worried, like, as soon as I got off, what happened. And I
Yeah.
looked and was waiting for blood to start coming
Oh
out.
gosh.
And only a little bit came out, so it didn't cut me that bad. But, obviously, that could have been detrimental if it would have completely sliced my finger open.
Right.
From then on, I kept my hands up while I was sliding and stayed away from those edges.
Yeah.
That's kind of something that Tough Mudder needs to stay on top of, but, just watch out for it.
Yeah. But I think that's with any of those obstacles with the walls that they have, though. Because I
Yeah.
know, and you can only do so
Everest
much
as
to make
well.
them, to make them flush. But
And then you hopped out, and that was the finish right there.
yeah. I liked that finish. I kind of liked having that finish at the end just because it was like I'm done.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
I think it ended
that's
well.
the end. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, that's it. Later.
Thanks for listening. Just kidding. No, it was cool. I did enjoy it. So before we kind of really get into the nitty gritty of our experiences, share a little bit about your gear. What did you use and how did you feel it did for you?
I didn't know how cold or how hot it was going to be, but I knew I needed compression for my legs. So I just used my second skin tights that I used in Tahoe last year that still kept me pretty warm, but not overly warm, not too warm. I have another pair of second skin tights that are made more for cold weather, and I had brought those just in case, but I ended up not wearing those. But I just wore the regular second skin tight compression tights, and I felt like those were perfect for me just because they still breathed pretty well, gave me compression. I mean, they lasted me all night. I didn't have to change them or anything like that.
How thick are those? Like, would you wear those if it was 30 degrees?
I'd probably wear my other ones if it was 30 degrees because my other ones have like
Okay.
that fleece lining. They're still not very thick,
yeah.
but they have that fleece lining.
To preface all this, it started out at 60 degrees, maybe even 61
Yeah,
when the race started, and by the time we finished, it was only 56 at the lowest.
Yeah. So it stayed cool pretty much all night long. And it wasn't an uncomfortable kind of cold. But it was cold enough to where, since we were constantly wet and we were never dry, it was just cold enough to where I think some people were pretty comfortable running in their wetsuits, but I would have been dying in my wetsuit.
Some people had wetsuits,
Yeah.
but then other people had shorts and t-shirt and no shirt.
Yeah, I personally think I would have been dying. I just don't like to be hot whenever I'm running. So, and then I ran with my mud gear compression socks. Those lasted me all night long too. And then my King MTs, which I have the updated model of the King MTs because I had some issues.
Okay.
I think we went into this in an earlier episode with the first model of the King MTs, where it was after a while, after some wear, they were producing some holes on the side in the same spots. But the updated model, the King MT 1.5s, Ultra updated it to where they reinforced the sides. No holes whatsoever. You can't even tell. Like, completely different shoe. And still just as comfortable. Still, I liked the aggressiveness of the lugs, especially with all the mud that we had to trudge through. Being neurotic like I am about shoes, I had brought 3 pairs of Ultras. I had brought a pair of Superiors just in case, like, I wasn't quite feeling my King MTs, because my Superiors and my King MTs, they kind of have the same amount of cushion. And then I also brought a pair of Temps that Ultra had sent me because I wanted to try something with a little more cushion just in case, like, after mile 20, I wanted to, have a little bit more cushion under me. So
Yeah. So how is the cushion on the King MTs, the new versions?
it's about the same as the last version, but I still like it. There's still definitely like that rock plate up underneath the sole of the shoes that protects your foot from like the rockier terrain and everything like that. And so running over
But
those.
do you know what the ride height is? I mean, I know they're a 0-drop shoe, but what's the thickness of the sole?
The thickness of the sole isn't very thick at all. I would say, if you're familiar with their road running shoes, I would say it's probably similar to their Escalante ride height.
It's more of a minimalist style? Or?
Yeah, definitely a minimalist style, which I like just because I don't like feeling like my feet are heavy whenever I'm running too.
Yeah. But running all night like that, did you ever feel like your feet were just taking a pounding?
No, and the only time that they did feel like that was whenever I just got that collection of all that sand and gravel and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Which was kind of unavoidable in my shoe. And it kind of collected all up underneath, kind of on the side of my foot where my arch is. And
Yeah.
like, I thought I had broken my foot. It hurt so bad. And I was just too stubborn to stop and just empty.
Never stopped and cleared them
No,
out.
because I'm like, no, I'm finishing this and I'm making it to the finish line, and that's where I'm going to stop and rectify this situation. But I never. So my plan going into it was that I was going to change out of my King MTs and get into my Temps because they have more of that cushion. And I wanted to do that like after about mile 20. Like I said, I was too stubborn. I just wanted to keep going because I knew some of my lap times were a lot slower than what I would have liked them to be. So like I felt like I needed to keep going, and I just never changed my shoes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, my shoes weren't an issue. I had put the Caterpie laces on my King MTs too. So like I never even had to tie my shoes. Like whenever I took my shoes off to empty them out, I just slipped them right back on. And with the no tie shoelaces, I was kind of afraid that in those really deep muddy spots I was gonna lose my shoe, but I mean it never even slipped off.
So before you talk about other gear, I'll share my clothing choices. I ran in shorts and started out in just like a dry fit shirt. And yeah, with the cold, it felt good enough that I ran in that most of the night. And then second to last lap, I was starting to get a little chilly to where it was slightly uncomfortable every once in a while. And so I took that off and put on a dry long sleeve compression shirt, which was nice to have a dry shirt for a few seconds. And then at the very end, the very last lap, just to make sure I stayed comfortable, I put on a rain jacket, like a windbreaker type thing, and that just kept me nice and cozy. Stayed in the shorts the entire night. Started out in the Merrell Agility Peak Flex shoes, not the first pair, not the newer ones. I haven't gotten a pair of those yet. And these shoes I have had issues with because of the way the lacing is. It's got these loops that are hooked onto the tongue, so the lacing goes through those and it pulls on that. And you really only get so much leeway because those loops can only stretch so far. So I ended up, because it kind of pressed down on my foot and was a little too tight on the top of my foot. So I ended up deciding to cut those off and wearing them like that. And it was fine. Like they feel good like that. But all those rocks from that creek got in my shoe. And after the very first lap, I was like, heck no, I'm not dealing with this the entire time.
And you had gaiters on, right? You started with your gaiters?
Yeah, I started with some Salomon gaiters. And literally like 15 minutes in, first set of mud we came through, they popped off. And I was like, God dang it. And just took them off, stuck them in my shorts, and threw them away after the first lap. So, yeah, I wasn't planning on stopping the first lap, and then I ended up stopping and throwing those away and taking off those Agility Peak Flexes and putting on my Merrell All Out Crushes, which have a thinner sole too. So I was really hoping to have a thicker sole all night, like the Agility Peak Flexes have, but ended up having to run on those thinner soles, which those shoes did fantastic because the Tough Mudder branded ones, they have that BOA lacing system that you can crank down. And I was able to, after every time we went through that creek, I got into pitfall and took them off, rinsed them out, and within a minute had them back on and was going with a fresh pair of shoes, basically. And I know everybody else, including the pros, probably had rocks in their shoes, and I didn't, and it felt fantastic.
Yeah, those rocks
it was worth
were
that minute
rough.
for sure.
Those rocks were rough because I don't think I emptied out my shoe until after my third lap.
Yeah, that's rough right there. But having those shoes, I do know that the bottom of my feet, in the front foot part of my foot, honestly kind of felt a little bruised this week because they took a beating, which made me feel good about my form because my heel didn't bother me. Yeah. It was just the forefoot of my foot. Right. So I was like, all right, I kept good form the whole time, which is good. But yeah, they kind of took a beating. So I do want to get a pair and try either the Ultras or the new Agility Peak Flexes and see how they do for the
Yeah,
longer
I'm
stuff.
definitely a fan of the newer 1.5, the King M.5. The cushioning, like my feet really weren't that sore afterwards. I mean, I definitely had that
Yeah, that's
like
good.
shuffle going afterwards because I mean we had just run 30 miles,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, like I really didn't feel too bad, and it was definitely my forefoot. Like I rolled it out. I'd gotten a massage this next day, and I was good. I was good to go. So,
How about nutrition? What did you do? What did you carry with you and eat during the race?
so this is what I kind of like to do on those multi-lap races: is have all my nutrition laid out to where it's just a grab and go kind of thing, where I'll
Mhm.
have like something solid to eat, a gel or like a chew. And then, of course, they were 5-mile loops, so I didn't feel like carrying a hydration pack was necessary. I had one ready at the go just in case, but for 5 miles, I didn't really think that was long enough for me to carry a hydration pack because I wasn't going to be out there for that
Yeah.
long. So
I chose not to do that as well, and I was happy with that result, with the results from. And they had 3 water stops, I think.
yeah, but they kind of started running out of cups, and you were
Well, there was nobody manning them,
Right.
so it was just
Yeah.
like everybody for themselves. You didn't know
Exactly.
if they were
Well-
open, but yeah.
yeah, and I just kind of did the whole like I just put my mouth under it and sprayed the water in my face. So I just did it like that whenever I had to. And really, I only stopped at the water stops a few times. I didn't find like hydration wise that I really needed to stop too much at the water stations that were out there.
And it wasn't hot, and it wasn't sunny, so
Yeah.
that helped a lot.
Yeah, so pretty much after each lap, I would grab a gel, grab a good swig of my my electrolyte drink mix, which I used Hammer Nutrition's Heed, which I
Okay.
probably should have been using they have 2 different electrolyte mixes that you can use during your racing, and Heed is one of those ones where like they probably recommend it for shorter races, and then they have another one called I think it's Perpetuum that you can use for longer races because like the carb ratio is different in their mixes. So
Okay.
yeah, the Heed I want to say it's like a 3-to-1 ratio, like carb to protein, and then the Perpetuum is like an 8-to-1 ratio. I was using the Heed. I had the Perpetuum solids because they have Perpetuum in a solid form that you can just break and chew instead of drink. So I had taken one of those, and I had used the Heed pretty much throughout my whole race, and I didn't feel like hydration was an issue for me. Fueling, definitely. I don't feel like I didn't get that like angry, hungry feeling at all during the race. I made sure to grab something like a gel or something every lap, because even if I didn't feel it at the end of that previous lap, I didn't want to go out there and start to feel it and be unprepared.
Have it catch up on you, yeah. I had some pretzels and some gummy bears and some dried cherries, which were really tasty during the race, and goos for out on the course. And I wore the shorts that I wear are High Elite shorts, and they have zipper pockets. And I actually, instead of doing like a race belt, I just shove a couple of goos in each pocket and just zip them up. And, I got storage there, so it works really well. So I was taking those out on the course. And honestly, water-wise, I had just like a new tab and some water. That may have worked. I don't know. But honestly, I probably was feeding myself a little bit too much because I wanted to make sure I didn't get hungry. And I ended up having a little bit of stomach troubles from it. And I never really thought about this before, but I'm going to reference those videos again that Yancey did. Ryan Atkins they were asking him what he needed, and he asked for Gas-X. And I never really thought about that. Like, if you having stomach troubles, yeah, like just take something for it.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're running and sloshing around. That makes sense that if you get stomach issues. But I need to remember that for next time and try it out. For me, it's tough to not overeat because I'm scared that I'm going to get hungry and it's going to make me weak.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I felt good about it. I just had to hey, stop freaking eating so much. And it'll be okay, so.
I'm always scared to eat solid food like that too much during a long race like that, because I'm worried I'm gonna have the same kind of stomach problems, and like I'm not going anywhere near those porta potties, especially in the middle of the night. Thank goodness.
I didn't have to go to the restroom. I just felt rough and like my stomach hurt.
Kind of cramping
So,
up a little bit.
like I would have a couple of burps and it would come out
Yeah.
and be like, oh, I feel better.
Yeah.
So some Gas X probably would have been perfect.
Yeah,
for me.
and it's so funny you say that because like how people out there, you know, you're running for 8 hours, you're on the trail with these people for 8 hours, you have no filter with these people, and like these guys would be running around me and I'd hear like burping and farting going all around me. I'm like, it's okay, I understand.
Well, yeah, I know I've burped before and I naturally just say, excuse me, after I burp, and people will be like, don't worry about it, man. Just let it out.
Yeah, I don't do the solid food too well during my racing. I'm okay with goos and chews and honey stinger gels and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, like at World's Toughest Mudder, you're gonna have to find some solid food that works for you.
Yeah, for sure. The 24-hour race, I'm definitely bringing like solid food with me. Something of substance.
So the last topic, the last part of this that I want to discuss is just your personal experience. What are some of the good stories that you have? I know this episode is going pretty long so far.
It's going to be a special episode, though.
Everybody that's still listening, thank you. I promise this is the good stuff right here. You know, it's our experiences, but you probably going to be thinking about the experiences you had. Please share those with us. You know, go to our Facebook page and leave some comments on the episode about it, or send us an email at ocrtalk@gmail.com. Let us know how it went for you. But do you want to start? I know I got some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I'll be pretty brief, but I'll start out with the sentimental stuff just because I want to get that out of the way. But yeah, so Daniel was supposed to run it with me, but he ended up getting strep the week of, so he couldn't come. I had a few people. I had him and this girl, Brandy Williams, that runs the Battle OCRs with us. She runs Elite, and she's done pretty well at some Spartan races this year. But anyway, they were sending me some pretty kind messages leading up to the race. So I was really nervous about it, but I was so pumped and I was so psyched going into this race. Like, I was feeling good. I was feeling the best I felt going into an OCR season. And like, I was just feeling ready. You know, they were sending me motivational stuff like all day long and some even the night before. Yeah, I keep talking about my third lap because it was probably my most difficult one because I was stubborn my first 2 laps. The first lap, that sprint lap, I ran straight through. I was feeling so good, I didn't really need to stop, so I just ran straight through. Did my second lap okay, still didn't stop. I stopped to grab a stinger gel and take a swig of my heat, and then I took off again. And that third lap, I guess all the gravel and everything like that collected in my shoes from the 2 laps before finally was like, hey, I'm here. And I had to stop and walk a lot of my third lap, which was really frustrating to me. And like, whenever I have to stop and I know and I feel like I can keep going, it's just frustrating. And I think we talked about the mental stuff in the last episode, but I really dug deep, and like, thank goodness they sent me all that stuff, all that good stuff to keep in my head, you know, during the race, because that's where I was going back to. Because I also found myself, I don't know if this was your experience too, but I also found myself by myself pretty early on in the race. Like, I was running by myself pretty early on. Like, there wasn't too many people around. I think maybe going out on my second lap, there wasn't really too many people around me that I was catching up to or that I was running ahead of. I was just kind of in limbo. And so, yeah, it was really kind of good to just remember that there were people like cheering me on, even though they were asleep. and it was funny because at one point I like to hum sometimes, especially if I'm running alone, just to kind of break the monotony and get my mind off the suck. And and I found myself humming the Flintstones theme. Like, that's just what came out of my mouth. And it made me start laughing, and I was like, okay, I'm doing this for fun. You know, it reminded me, I'm doing this for fun. This is supposed to be fun. And that was just hilarious.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, that third lap was killer to me because I walked most of it. It took me just under 2 hours to finish that third lap, which, it's still, but I'm still glad for it because I learned a lot. And it was that lap that I was looking pretty rough whenever I finished. And I was like, I just need to stop. I need to regroup. This is what I need to do to take care of myself. And I did it and I went out. My fourth and fifth laps were great. They were like, they felt good. I was finally able to run most of those laps after that. But yeah, and I think just being out there with the community, the start line was pretty emotional because we talked about, Sean had talked about Jennifer Golick, and they kind of, it, for some reason, it just kind of like hit me a little bit. And so it was just kind of emotional. And I was like, that's true. Like, you think about so many people who can't be running this race, who would want to be running this race, and, you just kind of, you're getting hyped for the race, but then at the same time, you're remembering why you do it. And then, just being out there with the community, just like meeting all kinds of people and everything. So whenever I came up to Kong and I thought Lindsay Webster had just passed me. And Lindsay and Rhea were running at that time. So Lindsay had just passed me. And I was coming up on Kong. So I don't have my glasses on whenever I run. And I can't really see that well at night. So I was coming up on Kong. And I just saw this little petite girl with a French braid in her hair at Kong. And, she was kind of hesitant to go across. And I go, come on, Lindsay, you can do this. And she goes across and then she falls and she gets down to do her penalty lap. And then she was waiting on her friend, I guess this other girl, which that should have tipped me off right there. Because I went across and I almost fell underneath the scaffolding off that big cushion thing. Yeah, that was scary. But I got off the big cushion and I slid down and I got closer to her. I was like, you're not Lindsay.
Okay, so you thought
yeah,
it was her.
She was like, no, I wish. We were running our penalty lap together. I was like, I totally thought you were Lindsay and you totally didn't correct me whenever I said, go Lindsay. So I felt kind of stupid, but they thought it was hilarious. Yeah, so it was my first OCR of the year, and really, like, I couldn't have imagined starting it off any other way, because it was totally worth the wait. Like, this year I was trying to focus on the longer endurance races and doing all these long training runs and not signing up for as many races that I would like to. And, it kind of just gets frustrating. But then, like, now that I've done that and I've done that race that I really wanted to perform at, like, I feel better about my decision. It makes me feel a lot more validated.
Yeah, obviously we love running, but holding back sometimes, and I need to start doing that myself, to hold back, to be able to perform better at the races you want.
Right.
And you did. And you got 25 miles. You got contender status for World's Toughest.
I did. I really wanted to get to 30, but as soon as I finished that third lap, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to 30. Whenever I was finishing my fourth lap, and I was well before cutoff. I finished my fourth lap probably at like 6:20 or 6:30 or so. They were like, I didn't know if you're gonna be going out for another lap, because they thought I had already done 30 miles. I'm like, no way. So
your pit crew?
Yeah, so I was like, no way. I'm well before cutoff. I'm going out for another lap.
Well, they were probably like, hey, we've been here all night.
Exactly.
Obviously, you've done 30 miles by now.
Exactly. But I am like, and that fifth lap was just awesome, because I started it early enough to where I didn't really have to worry and push too much, and I really didn't want to push too hard to like try and make it in before 7:45 to finish like a sixth lap, because if I pushed that hard, then I definitely wouldn't come in before 8:30, and then it would just be wasted miles. So but I'm really happy with how I finished.
Did you see anybody interesting? Anything interesting happen on the course?
Oh, so that infamous third lap of mine where I was feeling like death and I was coming through. So I was coming through the finish line, and it's dark, so you can't really see sometimes who's passing you or whatever.
Right.
I was coming off happy ending. I was running through to the finish line because I really wanted to get my shoe off and empty out my shoes. And I saw all these cameras at the finish line. I was like, cool. They're like videoing people coming through the finish line. And like, I'm like, this is so cool. I might be able to like make it on CBS. Who knows? There's all these, there's this huge camera crew in front of me. And I'm like smiling for the cameras and everything. And then here comes Ryan Atkins like running in behind me. I'm like, oh, that's
right
why. Yeah. He had probably finished like his third or his fifth lap or something like that. He came finishing in behind me, running through. I was like, oh, that's why they're there. Maybe I'll at least accidentally make it on TV.
Yeah, you might be there with him. Hey, and in 2016 at Worlds, after he crossed the finish line, I was kind of right behind them after him and John, and I like patted him on the back, and he turned around and shook my hand, and so I actually did make it on there. So you might do the same.
Maybe so. And then I think after I finished that lap, I started my next lap with Lindsay, and she was feeling kind of rough. I mean, she took off. So she took off as soon as we went up that past that fence up that first trail. Like I didn't see her after that. Who else did I see? Oh, Heather Bodie from Overcome and Run. She passed me, I think, on my second lap. I didn't realize it until she was ahead of me, so I didn't want to be like, "Hey."
Oh, okay. Did she have just Bodie on her shirt?
Yeah, I think she had just H Bodie on the back of her of her bib.
I did see that she did get contender status as well.
She got 25 miles.
Congrats to her, too. Now, I did see a pass by Jim Campbell, gave him a pat on the shoulder and told him hello, and he was like, hey, buddy, good job, or something like that.
I offered to help him up Berlin Walls, because I think he was having back problems.
on one of my second or third lap, I ran across Will Hicks, and it was funny because I know I've seen pictures of him, but I'm really not sure. Honestly, this is funny. He's going to laugh, hopefully not feel bad when I say this, but from his voice, always pictured him to look like Scott Keneally, but a little beefier. Like, Scott Keneally is kind of a skinny dude, like he's just a thin guy. But I imagine Will Hicks to look like him, but just with a little more muscle on him. Because he's got such a good, rough voice. You know, he sounds like a man's man.
What did he say in his last podcast? He said, I guess you figured I've got a face for radio or something like that.
He said, yes, he has a face for podcasting. But he does not have the beard or the hair. It looked like me with a bald head. So as I ran by, he saw I had OCR Talk on the back of my bib so that people would, see it and hopefully listen in. But as I ran by him, he saw that, and, we've been talking through like emails and stuff, and he said, Jason Dupree, and I turned around and looked back, and from the voice and also thinking who else would recognize me by OCR Talk, and so knew it would probably be him. So I turned around and said, Will Hicks? And so I stopped and shook his hand and said, hey man, nice to meet you. And I shined my light right in his face and was like, I'm going to shine my light in your face because I want to see what you look like, because I wasn't really sure. So yeah, and then I actually said, hey, you're bald like me. Which I'm not sure if I think it's okay to say that when you are as well. So I chatted with him for a moment. He's still kind of nursing his knee from his last injury, so he was just kind of taking it easy with that. But it was really cool to get to see him. And then I said goodbye, and didn't see him again for the rest of the night. I know I saw a couple of the top guys passing. Obviously, it's easy to tell when people are flying by you that they're one of the top ones. When it got light, I could tell whenever Rhea or Allison passed me.
Yeah, that was one thing. Whenever the sun came up, that was...
Yeah. Oh, it was so nice.
It's so weird how when the sun comes up, you're just re-energized. You forget how tired you are. You forget however many laps you did before. And you're like, holy crap, I can run this course now.
Yeah, and that's something I think people need to keep in mind when you do these kind of long courses. When you're in the depths of it in the middle of the night, that's something you just got to hold on to. If I can just make it till the morning, you'll have that renewed energy, at least for a little bit, and continue on from there.
At least carry you through to the finish.
Now, one of my favorite moments was towards the end. It was still dark. I was on Loch Ness Monster, and we had a team. We were kind of working our way through it. Melissa Dugan, Sharkbait, was actually in that crew with us, and so we're all going over. And as we're going over the second one, I get to the other side, and we're pulling it, letting the last few people come over, and Ryan Atkins starts flying over the top of it. And it was funny because as he's on the top of I think I was still hanging from it, I don't know. As he's on the top of it, I like patted his bicep and was like, "Hey man, great job." And for a moment, time stood still, and I caressed his beautiful bicep, and we locked eyes with each other, and we stared into each other's souls, and it was just, my heart pounded. And then the next thing I know, I'm being dragged from out of the water and getting water pumped out of my stomach. No, I'm just kidding. That didn't really happen. Saying that, in case the joke didn't come across, that I was dreaming all that it didn't really happen. I was actually just drowning. But no, he really did come over, and I gave him a pat on the bicep, and he continued on his way. But it was a funny little moment. And then ran with Sharkbait for just a moment there, and then kept on going. And yeah, it really was, to me, one of the hardest, if not the hardest, races I've done because of how hard I had to push. And I know my mileage is not there yet. Like, I'm still working on upping my mileage this year. And it's not quite there yet to run that kind of distance super comfortably. So obviously, everybody gets hurting by the end of it. But to get 30 miles, I came in and I had this time frame in my head the entire time, and my cushion for that last lap was getting bigger and bigger after the first couple laps. But then towards, lap 3 and 4 and 5, it was starting to get a little smaller, and I was like, oh man, I'm not sure if I'm going to have time. And I really wanted to have that nice, easy lap at the end, but I didn't have time to. So by the time it was, time for that last lap, it was like, I've got to hustle. If I take my time and walk, I may not make it. And so I put in the work, and I actually finished my last lap faster than I did my second to last lap. And so that shows how much I pushed, and I really dug deeper than I probably ever have. And it was tough, and I did it, and it just felt like such a huge accomplishment to just continue and not give up and make it all the way through. And it was so cool at the very end. Apparently, I passed you somewhere along the way on the first lap in the crowd. Yeah. And then at the very end, I jumped on the rope for rope-a-dope. And as my body spun around, I saw you, and I'm like hanging. And I'm like, hey, Anna! And then climbed on up, and, we exchanged pleasantries and said, finish hard, as you went on to the penalty lap, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was done with that obstacle.
But I knew, like, at that point, it was like, okay, I'm at rope-a-dope. I know I've got time, looking at my watch, because it really felt like it was just counting down the entire time, and I was a little worried along the way, and got to that point and felt relieved and made it through. And I think I finished with, I believe, 15 minutes to spare, and then you came through about another 10 minutes or so later, and you had probably about 10 minutes left to spare yourself. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people kind of end up experiencing this, but during that, while I was still pushing, I was saying to myself, I don't care about running 75 miles at World's Toughest anymore. I just want to go and enjoy it. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this in much pain anymore. But, you're done with that. A couple days pass by. The body starts to heal. And this morning I was on the way driving to Houston for work. And as the sun rose, I was in my car, and I felt that renewed energy that I felt on the course as the sun rose. And it reminded me of how it felt on the course, and just made me remember how awesome it is out there. And it's so funny because as awesome as it was, I was in pain.
Right.
But that pain, it's like we just forget about it and forget how intense it was. And honestly, this is why I think we do it, because all the good parts of it are what stand out in our memories, whereas all the pain just kind of fades away.
Yeah. I mean, the pain is just temporary. I mean, the next day I took off work, and like I said, I went and got a massage. And I got the deep tissue massage, not thinking holy
Oh,
cow,
man,
it's gonna
yeah.
hurt. and she was like working my shoulders and she was like, just relax. I'm like, oh, I can't
Oof.
relax. This hurts
Ugh.
so bad. And then the next day, yesterday, I went and saw my chiropractor and I hadn't seen him in like a year and a half. And he's like, oh my gosh, I have not seen you in so long. I'm so mad at you. But oh my gosh, the chiropractor felt more amazing to me than the massage did. And yeah, after I was done at the chiropractor, I was like, man, I feel good. Like, I feel like a new person. I don't even feel like I just ran 28 miles this weekend. So I went to the group run and I ran and it's a 5K route that we run. And I was running with one of the guys that is in charge of the group run, and he kind of tries to stay with the people that don't go as often so that they don't get lost along the route.
Okay.
And so I was running with him, and he's asking me, he's like, what kind of pace are you looking at? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just kind of looking to take it easy, just kind of shake it out and whatever. So we're just like running along and everything, and we finish, and he's like out of breath, and he's like, do you breathe through your mouth whenever you run? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that just looked way too easy to you. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, we were going at like an 8-minute, 8:10 pace. I'm like, really? I'm like, oh, really? I felt good.
Yeah, I haven't run yet since because my legs just felt destroyed.
I'll tell you, my legs did not feel, they felt heavy during that run, but they didn't feel like I couldn't run, you know? Like I knew at the end of the run, they were going to feel a lot better.
Well, this has gone on for quite a while, so to anybody that did stay and listen this far in,
You're a
that's
trooper.
awesome. We really appreciate it. I know our personal stories, that's the part that really stands out to us. Of course, we hope that you can get out there and make your own personal stories, because that's why we do this, and that's why it's so much fun. And let's just leave it at that. It really was a great race, and Tough Mudder, they seem like they're getting their stuff together. But I think this race was an example of how it's really more about what you put into
Absolutely.
it. You can go to any race and have a great race.
Absolutely. And I want to hear other people's experiences if they were at the race this weekend. I know we've got to have some stories out there.
All right, Anna, anything else before we
No,
go?
I'm just looking forward to Worlds now.
All right, well, thanks, everybody.
Thanks
Take
for
it easy.
listening.
Don't forget to check us out on Facebook. Don't forget to follow Listen and Talk, and let us know how you felt about it. Bye, everybody. Declan, you want to say hello?
No.
Bye.